Hey everybody, I'm Karsten.
And I'm Brianne.
And today we are taking a look at what M15 has to offer for Commander.
Since this is a core set, we'll touch on some awesome reprints from the set, some honorable mentions the set has to offer, and then we will count down the top 10 most relevant M15 cards in Commander.
And so let's start off with our reprints. What is your favorite reprint from M15?
Court of Calling.
Oh, that's pretty easy.
When I saw that they had Convoke in the core set, I decided I was going to be mad if they didn't reprint it. The card was way too expensive. I don't like when really good Commander cards are super expensive and hard to get a hold of because I want everybody to be able to play with them if they want, and that's what this reprint of Court of Calling is going to give green players that don't have a bunch of money a chance to play it.
I gotta admit, there's a lot of really cool reprints, but one of my favorites is Crucible of Fire, because dragons, yeah, I mean, the Cons of Tarkir is coming. There's supposed to be dragons or something to do with dragons, so hopefully we have more awesome dragons to put in our Commander decks in the future, and Crucible of Fire is just going to help that. And so, of course, we have a bunch of new stuff in our honorable mentions. First off, we, of course, have a return of Slivers.
Just because there's new Slivers doesn't mean they're going to even fit into existing Sliver decks. They've got to actually give you a good option, and I think the blue and the black ones are probably the best option. And then, of course, Sliver Hive. Any land that makes slivers is awesome. And then you also have Obelisk of Urd, so you can just pop that into play, and all of a sudden your slivers are even scarier than they were before. And Sliver decks weren't the only archetype that got a boost. Aura decks also got some help because Heliod's Pilgrim is only 3 mana. Currently your creature option for that is Totem Guide Heartbeast at 5, which is still going to be good. And then Spectral Ward, stick that on your Aura Voltron commander and just go to town.
We also have Soul of Ravnica. All the souls are really, really good, and it was really hard not to bunch all the souls up into one group in our top 10. Soul of Ravnica is fantastic. It draws you cards, and it's really cool. It works outside of the battlefield.
So the only downside of Soul of Ravnica is that it's a mono blue card, but you really only want to play it in a multicolor deck. Because if you have this in a 5-color deck, that's where it's really going to shine, because you're going to pay 7 mana. Maybe you have your 5-color commander out, and you're going to draw a bunch of cards. So that's the only downside, is it's mono blue, but you don't really want to put it in a blue deck.
We also have Act on Impulse, which you pay 3 mana to pseudo draw 3 cards. It's pretty sweet. I love the artwork.
Our next set of cards are all Graveyard Recursion. Soul of Innistrad, Endless Obedience, and Return to the Ranks are all great cards, and they all kind of do certain things. Soul of Innistrad is really good if you have a Graveyard Abuse deck. Endless Obedience is really just a potentially cheaper Rise from the Grave. Return to the Ranks, I think, is the coolest one because it can only get creatures with converted mana cost of 2 or less. But especially if you have a way to recur that, say with Restock or something, you can really make a smaller curve aggro deck a lot more viable of a strategy.
Next, you have some awesome token production and support for the tokens. Spirit Bonds is a really cool way to produce tokens. Soul of Zendikar just produces beasts. Soul of Theros makes all of your tokens just ridiculous. And then Goblin Rabble Master, you don't have to attack with him. He can stand back and let all the other goblins go in front of him and still produce those goblins. And so you can combine all these cards, add them to an awesome Rith deck.
I think Polymorphous Jest is hilarious because someone's like, I'm gonna attack you with all my big, huge, scary stuff, and you're like, no, you just have a bunch of frogs. Sometimes blue decks are good at being obnoxious, so blue cards that are good at being hilarious are always welcome in Commander.
Chief Engineer is one of my personal favorite cards in the entire set. I think this card has potential to make artifact decks just ridiculous. Now, the only downside is, Convoke still only works with creatures. So if you're going to be playing an artifact deck, you still have to have the creatures to convoke those said artifacts. But I think he's just awesome. I really like this card a lot.
And then just in case your weird, possibly creature-oriented blue deck didn't have enough ways to draw cards with Bident of Thassa, we now have Chasm Skulker and Military Intelligence. Now, I realize Chasm Skulker doesn't let you draw cards itself, but it's really good if you draw cards, because then you get a bunch of squid tokens. And I love the squid, they're so cool. And then Military Intelligence, if maybe you don't have a bunch of creatures, but you're always reliably attacking with a couple, it's just another way to get a little more advantage out of whatever creatures you're swinging with.
Next we have Jace the Living Guild Pact, and I really like this guy. I think a lot of people are kind of hating on him right now. I really like the fact that you pay 4 to get 5 loyalty right off the bat. You use his +1 ability, you get 6 right off the bat. His +1 ability its power is somewhere between Scry 1 and Scry 2.
Well, and I also like because blue-black decks are always good with playing stuff out of their graveyard, and because you can put one of the cards in your graveyard instead of on the bottom of your library, suddenly he's really good in blue-black decks that are maybe trying to dump some of their stuff in their graveyard.
Especially if it's like a blue-black zombie deck or something like that.
Next we have Mercurial Pretender, who I was all set to put in the top 10 until I realized he only copies your creatures. I'm not saying he's bad. He's still really awesome because you can play him. Oh wait, I want to copy something else. You bounce him. He just feels like you're paying 5 mana. Couldn't we have just copied anything?
He really wants to be Sakashima the Imposter really, really bad, but he's not Sakashima the Imposter. He
would have been better than Sakashima because he does it as soon as you activate it. Sakashima doesn't come back until the end of your turn, so I was super stoked, and then I'm like, aww, it's only your dudes. But then again, maybe you bribery someone's awesome dude and now you're copying it. Haha.
In Garuk's wake.
Oozes cheese?
It just oozes cheese, but...
We did get a sweet promo of it. That was nice.
It is, and it is scary. We know Plague Wind is good, and Garuk's Wake is a second Plague Wind in your deck, and it just has an awesome name and awesome art. Well, it's cheesy, but awesome. Cheesy in a good way.
And the fact that it hits their Planeswalkers, too.
That's the biggest thing.
But I think some new players are going to get caught up in the same Plague Wind trap of not stopping to think that it is a lot of mana to cast.
Yes.
Don't play this card unless you can actually afford to cast it on a reliable basis. Otherwise, you're going to be staring at your hand like, wow, wouldn't it be nice if I had 9 mana to cast this card? But it is really powerful.
Necromancer Stockpile is... In Zombie Tribal, it's going to be awesome because it gives you just great draw power. You have to pay 2 to draw a card, and you end up losing your creature, but you don't really lose a creature because you get a 2/2 zombie if it was a zombie that you discarded.
Oh no, I discarded my Gravecrawler. Whatever will I do?
I guess I'll just bring it back because I just produced a zombie with it. So, Necromancer Stockpile, if you love zombies, you play Zombie Tribal and Commander, Necromancer Stockpile's got to go in there.
There are a lot of cool Pauper cards that came out for this set, and I didn't want to bore everyone with talking about all of them, but Rotfeaster Maggot is probably one of the ones that even if you're not playing Pauper Commander, I think it's fantastic because it's a good body, it's an enter the battlefield ability, and not only do you get to have graveyard hate, you get some life gain out of it. And we all know that black decks are paying a lot of life, so they kind of don't mind a life swing. You see that big juicy thing that someone just discarded into their graveyard or that you just killed because you're playing black. Oh, I just killed your Craterhoof Behemoth, and now Rotfeaster Maggot's gonna nom your Craterhoof Behemoth.
Siege Dragon, Colonian Twin Grove, Phytotitan, these are the big stupid beaters. Siege Dragon.
Being able to basically Pyroclasm when you attack means it's really good. If you have low curve aggro decks in your play group, it's good. If you don't, there are way better dragons to play, but he's good enough to be worth mentioning.
And then we have Colonian Twin Grove. That's just, if you have enough forests, this guy's ridiculous because he produces 2 of them. That one Doomblade isn't going to be enough. Now your opponents are going to have to come up with another way to get rid of this ridiculous beater card.
Well, you're probably going to use this to bait out a Wrath, honestly.
Exactly.
Because they're just dudes. They're just vanilla dudes, but they are big vanilla dudes.
And they still win games. And then Phytotitan is just going to be annoying because that thing's just going to keep coming back. Big, it's scary. We love stuff that comes back in Commander.
It's not often that we get really awesome ramp spells that can maybe step up and meet the power of some of the ramp spells that we already have, but I think Nissa's Expedition might do that because it's 1 more than Explosive Vegetation, but it has Convoke. So there are plenty of decks where this card is better than Explosive Vegetation. Not to mention, it's going to be a lot easier to get a hold of than the aforementioned $2 common. And
there are going to be decks where you're going to be playing this as Expedition for free and not caring because you have plenty of other creatures still on the board. And then finally, we have Genesis Hydra, who was very, very close to making top 10. Genesis Hydra is ridiculous. Whenever we first read it, we thought it was kind of like Genesis Wave on a body, so you got to get everything that you pulled off the top for free. But unfortunately, you only get 1 thing off the top for free.
And this is why we don't design Magic.
Yes, because the Genesis Wave on a body would have been ridiculous.
But as it is, if you sink a lot of mana into this, you're basically going to get the cream of the crop of whatever it is that are in the top, we'll say like 15 cards of your library. You dig, and maybe you don't get everything, but you're like, oh, look at this World Spine Worm I found in here. So for green decks, it's still another good tool to filter through the shaft and dig for the really powerful stuff that you're wanting to find.
I think this card is going to be played in a lot of green decks, and I think we're going to see it a lot. Now it's time for our top 10 most relevant M15 cards in Commander. At number 10, we have Aggressive Mining. Now, I know that we just talked about Genesis Hydra. Why isn't Genesis Hydra in the top 10 if Aggressive Mining is in the top 10? Because Aggressive Mining, it is a card that just has Commander written all over it. It probably won't get played in any other format. It's a card that you have to build around. It's definitely corner case.
Gives red draw power.
That's the biggest thing, because later in the game, when you need this, kind of fuel your grip a little bit, give yourself a little bit more things to do.
Well, and you can tap the land for mana because it doesn't have to be an untapped land.
Yeah.
And it says you can't play lands. It doesn't say lands can't enter the battlefield under your control. So even in green-red, oh look, I just cast Boundless Realms. Aggressive Mining is going to be drawing you 2 cards every turn, and what do you care?
Not to mention, the card is just very flavorful. You're stripping the land for all of its resources, and you don't care. It's a card that says, here, Commander players, build something around this. Make it happen, and that's why we really like it.
At number 9, we have one of the cards that I'm actually most excited for, Aether Spouts. Not because it's really cool or unique, but because it is really, really good utility. Because Aetherize is fantastic in Commander. I've been putting it in almost all of my blue decks because it's basically a fog and a complete tempo swing in your favor. This card is even worse because they have to either say, I'm going to put it on bottom and not draw it again anytime soon, or I'm going to put it on top so I can draw it, but I'm going to have to be drawing cards I've already seen instead of getting new, fresh cards to keep fueling my strategy. So this card is really just going to slow down any deck that tries to come and alpha strike you.
At number 8, we have a green uncommon in the form of Reclamation Sage. And you're like, hold up. Acidic Slime already does this, right? Reclamation Sage is something that is a little bit unique when you actually look at some of the other cards that do things like this.
It's mono green. It does it when it enters the battlefield. It's an elf, and it's less than 5 mana. So Reclamation Sage is a low curve card. It's got good tribal affiliations, and it does it when it enters the battlefield, and it's not just artifacts or just enchantments. That's actually very rare in green, so it may seem really boring and like it's not going to see a lot of play, but then when you look at the other options you have in mono green, suddenly you realize that this card's going to get played in a lot of
This
decks.
card is a staple in the making. I think we're going to call it right here. This card is a staple in the making.
At number 7, we have Nissa Worldwaker. For a lot of green decks, being able to untap 4 lands as a plus ability, really good, because that is so much mana. Especially if you have something like Gaia's Cradle that makes more than 1 mana, or even something as simple as the Ravnica Bounce lands. And then you can animate your lands, because sometimes, even in Commander, you just need a few more dudes. Honestly, I don't want to ultimate this lady. I just want to keep her out and just keep making tons and tons and tons of mana.
At number 6, we have Resolute Archangel. A very obnoxious card. It's a 4/4 flyer for 7, so its stats aren't necessarily the most exciting things in the world, but someone may have just made a huge swing and dealt you a lot of damage. You know what? Just Resolute Archangel. Oh, and while we're at it, why don't we just bounce it and do it over and over again, so you know you can't die. Your life will just always be 40.
So this just makes those blue-white, like Pillow Fort or Prison decks, even more obnoxious. Because just in case you decided to pay the 50 gazillion mana it takes to attack them and get past their wall of, like, redonkulous chump blockers. Oh, wait, I'm back at 40 again, guys.
She's perfect for those decks.
So, at number 5, we have a Johnny Steadfast. He's really exciting for all his Planeswalker potential, but I also just like the fact that he's like, one of your creatures gets bigger, it gets first strike, vigilance, and lifelink. So everyone's freaking out about his -2 because it is really cool. His plus ability is really awesome too, because you're like, oh look, in my Super Friends deck, where I've got maybe a couple dudes, I'm gonna just kind of swing one of them to gain myself some life, and it has vigilance, so I still have a blocker. So he's even better for your Super Friends decks because of his plus ability.
At number 4, we have one of the most talked about cards in M15, the Chain Veil. Wizards was like, you guys want a combo piece? Here's a combo piece. And the last set review we had, we talked about Sage of Hours and Ajani Mentor of Heroes being 2 of the best cards in Journey into Nyx. Well, the Chain Veil all of a sudden makes those cards even more ridiculous, because now you can actually go infinite with a Johnny, Mentor of Heroes, and Sage of Hours. The Chain Veil makes those Super Friends decks even more ridiculous because you're getting to use those Planeswalker abilities multiple times. Planeswalkers are powerful. The Chain Veil just makes them even more powerful.
Double Elspeth 1.0, it gets +6/+6 in flying. If you think about the Chain Veil, you need some awesome Planeswalkers for it. So at number 3, we have Garruk Apex Predator. As awesome as the Chain Veil is, you need a lot of Planeswalkers. Garruk just needs Garruk. And oh my gosh, does this guy bring everything you need to the table. He's 7 mana, not to say that you can play however much high-costed stuff you want, but come on guys, we're playing Commander. I think we can cough up 7 mana for a guy with 4 abilities. And yes, I will say that he is better in Commander than the other guy with 4 abilities. Because he just destroys the other guy with 4 abilities. And just in case that wasn't good enough, do you need a beast token? Oh wait, let's give it Death Touch, because that'll make it even better. Somebody's creature giving you a hard time. Let's go ahead and blow that up. We'll get you some life gain too, because Garruk's got your back. And just in case you want to ultimate this guy, basically he says kill target opponent now. Like seriously, go attack that guy because you can kill him in like 2 seconds. He's just amazing.
At number 2, we have an awesome artifact, Soul of New Phyrexia. We think he is the best soul out of the whole cycle of souls. A 6/6 for 6 with trample is always welcome, but his abilities are what we're going to talk about for real here. Permanents, not creatures, not artifacts. Permanents you control gain indestructible until end of turn, including him, not other permanents.
So you're saying I should put this guy in my Super Friends deck that I'm building?
Yeah, or you should put this guy in your really aggressive artifact creatures deck that you're building. Or you should put this guy in your control deck that you need that one creature that you don't want to die that you're going to win the game with.
Or your enchantments and artifacts. He really
He's
can
bonkers.
go into every deck and be good in it.
I mean, and you're just like, well, you know, you can always Path to Exile him. So, indestructible stuff is still ridiculous in Commander.
At number 1, we have Perilous Vault. Now, I know it's kind of been done before because Oblivion Stone's really good, but Oblivion Stone's really good. So yeah, this one's 1 more mana to cast. Same mana to activate, so instead of being 8 altogether, it's 9. But it kind of makes up for it when you say that you exile everything. Yeah, you have to exile it, so oh no, it can't be abused.
So New Phyrexia, as awesome as we think he is, can't do anything about Perilous Vault.
And all those gods that have been terrorizing Commander tables since the Theros block came out. This card is just really good, and it goes into any Commander deck. And right now, even though it's a Mythic, it's still probably easier to get a hold of than Oblivion Stone.
So that is our set review for M15. Thanks for watching. There is a lot of really awesome, powerful stuff in this set.
It didn't have anything format breaking, but it's got a really good balance of old stuff and new stuff. The old stuff has potential for Commander players who's never got to play it before. The new stuff has potential for all of us. So what we want to know is, what cards from this set are you looking forward to putting in your decks?
As always, I'm Karsten.
I'm Brian.
And thanks for watching.